So, a few months ago, I had the opportunity to read this book called Becoming Trader Joe, and it's an autobiography by Joe Colomb, who was the founder of Trader Joe's. If you ask me, this book is a masterclass in business and is a must read, especially if you're in the retail, the restaurant, or the service business. I would highly, highly recommend this book. It is loaded with business lessons. And one of the things that I wanted to talk to you today about was one of the most important things that Joe ever did in his business, and that was to pay people well. And I just wanted to read a few selections from this book so that you can get a feel for this important decision that Joe made and stuck with for 30 years. I did make a full podcast episode on this book, and I left a link below if you'd like to check that out. Or if you'd like to pick up the book for your own personal library, I left a link for that as well. So, up front, Joe says, "The most important business decision I ever made was to pay people well." When asked why, Joe would say the following: "Time and again, I am asked why no one has successfully replicated Trader Joe's. The answer is that no one has been willing to pay the wages and benefits and thereby attract and keep the quality of people who worked at Trader Joe's. And by paying high wages and benefits, Joe had almost no turnover, which worked to his advantage quite effectively because he almost had to never hire and train people. In fact, he had a long waiting list of people waiting when he had open positions. Another quote that I really love from Joe, he says, "Good people pay by their extra productivity," which was so true. His employees were willing to go above and beyond for Joe and his company. In addition to good pay, Joe offered health insurance. He says, "Through our health insurance and income contribution insurance, I think we pretty much pre solved the problems of family health and living expense bills, problems that very arguably could excuse theft." He goes on to say, "If the employees are stressed by medical bills they may steal, that's one good reason for Trader Joe's generous health and dental plans." And in the book, he says that after he implemented these higher wages in these health and benefit plans, he saw employee theft drop to almost zero. Now, Joe likes to brag just a little bit. He says, "I want to brag about something here. In 30 years, we never had a layoff of full time employees." And I think that is certainly worth bragging about. That is impressive. And then he goes on to talk about his managers. They call their managers captains. He says the following: "The captains had that salary plus a bonus that theoretically had no limit. The bonus was based on Trader Joe's overall profit, allocated among the stores based upon each store's contribution." And in just one example in the book, he says, in 1988, several captains made bonuses of more than 70% of their base pay, and our 15.4% retirement accrual applied to bonuses as well as base pay. And that is a massive incentive if you're an employee seeking to move into management or just to keep your managers around for the long term. I mean, 15.4% just for retirement alone, that's quite impressive. I mean, most companies are like 3 or 4% if you're lucky. And as a result of all of this high pay, there's a bunch of other things that Joe would do to keep his employees engaged in the business, such as open communications, employee growth, employee training. They would have parties and a lot of recognition. And I'll cover those later in some future short podcast posts like this. But for today, I just wanted to touch on the high wages and how Joe said that that was one of his most important decisions he ever made. If you'd like to listen to the full podcast, there's a link right here down below. And then I'll also leave a link for the book. I highly, highly recommend it if you can. Thanks for listening. Until next time, make it a beautiful day in the neighborhood, my friend.